Yo, I just had this crazy dream, man. I on our way to the job site, but I was sleeping. It was a dream that my wife and I were like poor and broke again and living in this huge house with a bunch of roommates in like this like really bad area, and there was like weeds growing up through the cracks, and it was a cluttered house of like pack rats, and we had just a little room and a bathroom. And yet all of our animals, there was no yard or anything, so they were just running around the neighborhood, and I just had to just cross my fingers and let go and know that they'd be okay. And they kept coming back to us. They were like, but they weren't safe, and we were miserable, and we were like poor, and all I could do was make sure that I could keep it enough together to keep us fed and keep my animals fed and keep us safe. And that was the only top priority, was our safety and food. And it was so realistic, like living in this, it was like a huge house with a whole bunch of random roommates we didn't know. And I woke up this morning and I was thinking about it. And sometimes things like that will motivate you so strongly. Like when I see somebody in a very unfortunate situation that they had caused themselves by their own negligence or ignorance or bad habits, or like just by not, if you read the book Napoleon Hill's Outwitting the Devil, he talks about staying on a straight and narrow path and not drifting. So it's like sometimes a small healthy dose of fear will keep you running. The famous comedian George Carlin said something about the difference between the poor, the middle class, and the rich. And basically, well, this is what he said, because I grew up poor, so I can talk about being poor. I know what it's like I've lived in 32 homes. I've slept in my car. We slept in a couple different homeless shelters. My mom, when I was little, we've lived in the projects, trailer parks, bounced around, slept on people's couches, on welfare. And so I know what it's like to be poor. But George Carlin said, he'll be like, the poor are there just to scare the crap out of the middle class and keep them showing up to those jobs. And so I think about this, there's these different dichotomies. There's two types of motivation. There's fear is what you're running from, and incentive motivation is what you're running towards. So this fear motivation keeps us running and working and wants us to mitigate risk. And then there's the incentive motivation, which is a higher level of needs that keeps you dreaming and thinking about the greater things. And only when we can get to our dreams into the higher bandwidth of consciousness, or the higher vibration that allows us to think abundant thoughts, then we will work hard to save money to invest it towards the future and be excited about new projects and generate abundance. But fear will keep you working hard and paying bills and saving money to avoid the worst possible case scenario or outcome. It's probably healthy to have a little bit of both. But what I'm getting at here is gratitude. My wife and I this morning, I'm running out the door, and we just feel so blessed to it. I put out a video on my other channel, the Window Cleaning Blueprint, recently. I might put it out on this channel, talking about how my wife and I, it took us 5.5 years from the day we decided to get our first home to actually pay off debt and get our credit scores together and save up enough money for a down payment and actually get approved and move into a house. It was 5.5 long years. It was hell. So when we finally got our house, it's like we couldn't believe it. And we just have a basic house. It's beautiful on the inside. It's like really, really nice. And we are very thankful for our house, and we love our house, and we feel like, I want to get a mansion one day. I want to have, I want a mansion off the beach in Florida. I want a mansion, or not a mansion, I get anxiety in a mansion, but a big, beautiful log and timber home up north in Traverse City, Michigan, off the water. I want 3 houses. I want real estate, Airbnbs, landscape business, media business, all of it. I want to make $1 million a month, and I want to make, $3.6 million a year in pure net profit take home. and be able to give away to charities and do all the things. So, like, we want that, right? But also, she has said she would be fine staying in our house forever. That's a great thing to hear. So it's like this part of us is reaching for the next step. But here's where I'm at right now, to get really serious. Instead of reaching and hustling and working hard to just advance lifestyle, that's dumb. I've read about this in Think and Grow Rich, which is great, but in The Millionaire Next Door by Thomas J. Stanley, he talks about America's wealthy, and your average millionaire is you never knew he and she was your neighbor. I'm not going to get into the whole thing, but they're pretty much average people who work very hard and they invest for the future. They're not these flashy millionaire types. So it's very important here's what I'm doing. I'm investing in my education and building deep skill sets, investing in all the stuff in my personal development that you can't see on the outside. I wanted to go upgrade our house and go get, a 4,000 square foot house. I wanted to go buy a Range Rover because I've always wanted. I want to blow money and go do crazy stuff, but I'm not going to. I'm investing into my knowledge and my education and all the things that I've always wanted to learn that I didn't have the time or couldn't afford to learn. Is what I'm doing, and because I believe it'll build a foundation that's so strong that it'll just be a generative knowledge that becomes a wellspring of abundance, that your very mindset just. And here's the most important part. Imagine being lied to and being under pressure and lying to yourself that it doesn't matter. As long as you figure out how to make a lot of money, you're successful and you'll be accepted and you'll be loved. Well, what if, I had this vision a few years ago. I saw like clouds and I saw 3 ladders in my brain, and I drew this. It's on a sketch pad. That you spend 20 years climbing, or even 30 years, up a ladder and through all the fog and through all the clouds to finally come out the other side. And it's success, but it's the wrong wall. The ladder's leaning against the wrong wall. So you end up unfulfilled. So even though you achieved success, you didn't do what was actually meant for you. Your highest mission and calling and mandate and purpose, you didn't fulfill your purpose. You just worked really hard to make a bunch of money so you could feel worthy. And you did it, and you totally missed the whole point and the mark, and therefore you failed. The next one is you climb a ladder, and it's lightning bolts and thunder, and there's a ceiling, and you can't even get there, and it's total failure. It's like the wrong path. And then the third one is a path where you climb the ladder through the smog and through the clouds. You come out the other side, and it's a beautiful sunshine because it was aligned up with your mission, mandate, and purpose, what God intended you to do, what you're supposed to be doing, and the things that truly fulfill you and make you happy that you've always wanted to do. So imagine, I would rather make $1 million doing something I completely love and that makes me happy than making $100 million being totally trapped in something that I hate, but I make a whole bunch of money. And if I didn't end up in that position, I'd find a way to make it happy, just give money away and then transition into what I love anyways. But you kind of get what I'm saying. If you're going to spend your life 50, 60 hours a week working anyways, wouldn't you eventually want to be doing something that you love and that fulfills you and makes you feel like it's good for you, it's good for others, good for your family, good for the world at large? It's beyond egocentric, it's beyond ethnocentric, it's world-centric and cosmic-centric. So if you begin with the end in mind and you think farther out, it's the sooner you can transition into doing what you love and what fulfills you. I'm hell-bent, determined, and stubborn to do the stuff that I love and that makes me happy, because I don't want to have a wife and like 3 kids, and now I'm having to pay for all their college, and my life has gone down the drain and I feel like a failure because I just did what made money. Now, some people, unfortunately, or it's not unfortunate, but aren't in this position. They already have kids, they're already well on their way, and they didn't think about this. But I think about this so much that I want to make sure, like, don't put the cart before the horse. I want to make sure that this thing is in place before I do this thing. And if this thing ain't in place, I ain't gonna do this thing. I don't want to go on to the next thing until this thing is locked down. And that's not the way I've totally lived my life, because when you got bills coming in, you got to run your ass off and get a business off the ground. You got to find a way to make money. You got to do whatever you're going to do now to feed yourself and survive and feed your family, period. But as soon as you get stable, then, like Stephen R. Covey in the book The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People talks about, take a shovel and start putting it and digging a trench in the other direction, even if you only have a minute a day. You can start building skill sets or building a business or doing something, or a side hustle, or your education, little by little by little, until that trickle becomes a flow, and that flow becomes a flood. So you're opening up new streams of education, streams of consciousness, streams of income, portfolio. You're building like passive income. So I'm obsessed with this, because if you do this long enough and you keep staying faithful and believing in your dreams, little by little by little, it's going to open up for you. I'm telling you right now, in my media business, I've had huge successes that I dreamed about my entire life. I've watched them happen in my own life. And there were so many times that I was tempted to throw in the towel or back off my media business because it wasn't working the way I hoped or wanted, or it was taking too long. And I started taking other people's advice and listening to it. And I was listening to the advice of people who didn't have a media business, so they would give me the wrong advice. And so I had to find people who had successful media business, because I got a landscape business and a media business, and really follow my heart and keep staying true. And it's really paid off for me. And it took me getting quiet and going within and listening to my heart and tuning out of what everybody else is saying. And it's still an ongoing battle, but we're getting more and more and more clarity every day, every month, every year. So get clarity around what's the best thing for your life and those in it. I feel so much better. I just talked all that out. I hope you're doing very well. I think we're going to get rained out. I'm worried right now. My little dog Gino just had a heart attack this morning. Like, fell off the bed and was shaking, collapsing, and breathing heavy, and I was holding him and praying. And I feel weird even leaving the house right now. So I'm going to be calling my wife like every hour. Is Gino okay? Is Gino okay?